press you for details.
But I will say I had a great night event where I did karaoke.
Ooh, what did you sing?
I sang the Pokemon theme.
I hope you did it in a room full of like businessmen who were really stuffy, and you just got them to open up.
You could say that. You could say that. I wouldn't say their businessmen are really stuffy, but they were. Some of them were reluctant, outgoing, or very. How was the word? Their personalities waiting for an opportunity to really let themselves go, and I was that point to let themselves go. And I will say that this is a fun tale, but it's a cautionary tale that when you're doing a training event and karaoke's on the menu, maybe not go all out on the first night, because I blew out my voice.
Oh no.
Yeah, I blew out my voice after. So day two, second official day at this event where we're like, energy's high, everyone's excited to be around each other, and I blew out my voice. And guess what? Because we created FOMO about going to karaoke night 1, we did karaoke night 2, and I still went up and did another song, and then completely ruined my voice for day 3, the last day, to which we were supposed to do filming. And thankfully, I didn't have to do any voiceover filming that day, but my voice was completely gone.
But you know what? I can even still hear it. I can tell that you're getting it back. Like it's not 100% there.
Yeah, it's a slow and steady recovery. But yeah, I it's funny. The more I talk, the more I realize that it's not quite there yet.
That's okay. It'll come back. Okay. It was worth it, right? It was worth it for the Pokemon song. There are reasons to let your voice strain a little bit. I like to tell my students, talk loudly, don't scream, because there's a difference. But in our case, we can exercise a little bit of wiggle room when it comes to the Pokemon theme.
Yep.
Now, I know I'm not a Starbucks guy. I don't think you're a Starbucks guy, but you were in Seattle. Did you go to the flagship Starbucks store just to say you've been there?
This is not my first time going to Seattle. I did not go this time, but I know the flagship Starbucks you speak of, and I've been there before, but not on this trip.
Is it gigantic?
It is actually. It's not as big as you think. The flagship, the first one, is in the harbor, and it's kind of like a very mall size Starbucks, like not like a big mall, like a small mall kind of Starbucks. I don't know how else to describe it, but it looks like it's the first location. That's what I'll say. But it has a kind of a rustic charm to it. I do have a quick funny story about Starbucks that I'll tell really quick. I'm sure the fans out there will appreciate this. So I flew in on the Monday, and when I landed and arrived at the hotel, which the hotel sat on the Microsoft campus, like it's within the campus. I already see Alex's comment. We're going to get to that, Alex. We are going to get to that. I have many thoughts about this movie. So I arrived at the arrived at the hotel that's on the Microsoft campus, and like 10 seconds being in the lobby, my coworker from Mexico came up to me. He's like, "Oh man, Ryan, so good to see you." I'm like, Paco, it's so good to see you. He's like, "I just came from Starbucks. You will not believe what happened. I just ran into Phil Spencer." And he has a picture with him and Sarah Bond, which Sarah Bond is the president of Xbox, and Phil Spencer is the vice president of gaming at Microsoft. But Phil Spencer is like the guy who has like led Xbox to where it is today, like in terms of being the ultimate business nerd. And he's a super awesome dude. And I still have yet to meet him. And I make the running joke with my team that when I meet him, he's going to recognize that I'm his long lost nephew, and he's going to give me the keys to the Xbox kingdom. Still has yet to happen.
You know what would have been hilarious if at the same time, completely unbeknownst to anyone, the Sony people planned their own like corporate event in like the same hotel. And then it turns into like a West Side Story gang war where you guys are like, when you're a Sony all the way. Hey. That'll happen next time.
Yeah, next time. I need to have you around and literally like find a way to pay you to be the quick-witted, like some quick-witted comedian guy on like hanging around these corporate events, because that joke would have flown so. I'm not even being sarcastic. It would have flown so well.
That would be either my personal heaven or my personal hell to have to entertain a bunch of business people. It would either go terribly well or just plain terrible, and I would crawl in a corner. Well, welcome to Infinity Rewatch X, everybody. I'm Andrew Fantasia.
What up? I'm Ryan J. Marvel.
And we are talking today about X-Men Past. Originally released here anyway in North America, May 23rd, 2014, 10 years ago. This is the one. I didn't even realize this until just now, but of all the X-Men movies we'll be covering, this is the one that's hitting its 10th anniversary during us covering it. It does not feel like this was 10 years ago.
No, it doesn't feel like it at all. Oh my God.
So this would have been, I don't know, where was I in my life? I would have been just about to leave the old place where I used to live and come here. Because I did that October of 2014. So unbeknownst to me, oh no, I know exactly where I was at this point in time. Why? Okay, May 2014, Ryan, I got my car in April 2014. So I was fresh of my new car. That's where I was in my life. Her name is April because that's the month I got her in. She is a lime green Hyundai Accent, and I love her. And she's still doing very well.
Okay. Wow. Interesting. Wait, it's the Bug, right? It was the Bug?
No, the Bug was my mom's car, and I would drive that. But mine is my Hyundai Accent.
Oh, your Accent. Right.
Yeah.
And you named it April, not only after the month, because of April and the...
Exactly, because it's green like a Ninja Turtle. So.
Yeah, 2014, it was an interesting year for me because that was when I landed my career, the career in which I'm currently in now, which I was in marketing, and I was a Xbox trainer for Microsoft, and that was when I started. It was a year into when I started as an Xbox trainer for Microsoft, and I got to be a part of the Xbox One launch, where I actually was one of the first people in Canada to go into a very private meeting room and look at it, look at the Xbox a week before we unveiled it to the public. And actually, going forward, probably a lot of these stories are going to be really cool. But yeah, I got to be a part of the launch for Xbox One, and it was a difficult time. It was, the young me would have been like, Ryan, you did it, man. You got one of the cool gigs. Got one of the coolest gigs in your life. You're working for video games. It's the best, right? And oh man. So I was representing Microsoft doing this Xbox thing, and this was Xbox's probably roughest launch they've ever had in their entire life, because they decided to feature more entertainment features than gaming itself. And man, that was a rough time out in field. I almost have like PTSD, man, because PTSD, man, because like people would scream at me being like, man, you ruined Xbox for me. And I'm just like, if I made the console, do you think I'd be walking around amongst you people? No, I wouldn't.
Who are these people? I'm going to track them down.
Yeah. Oh no, it was brutal. Like, they were waiting in line for PS4 because PS4 was killing it. And they were like, you messed up Xbox. What's the matter with you? And I was just like, it wasn't me, man. The Xbox is still cool. We got Rise. Rise is cool, right?
That's right. That was the infamous launch where like all the entertainment stuff was happening, and then the price, right? And Sony did that whole thing where they were just like $299 or whatever, and it created the okay.
And Rise was coming out, and I took you to a gaming event called the House of X.
Yeah.
And we got to play Rise, and you had a random encounter that has never and I'm pretty sure has never been seen since, because it had to have been a dev build. It had to have been a dev build. But you had a streaker run through the gladiatorial arena during your gameplay, and again, I've tried to recreate the circumstances to which that happened. I've never seen it happen again.
If anybody out there is the dev who made that streaker, thank you.
Yeah, we screamed Giddish Broish laughs, but it was hilarious.
So that's where we were at in our lives when X-Men Days of Future Past hit the big screen. This was directed by Bryan Singer, so he came back for the first time since X2. And it does really feel like they took the Matthew Vaughn world and the Bryan Singer world and really played and meshed it together, up to and including starting the movie with the original X2 theme song. So, like, this movie, Ryan, I did not know this till last time you and I chatted, but you are not a fan. Wow.
It's, it harkens back to the motto in which many of these X-Men films we've experienced has, which is if the cartoon did it better. And speaking of, I mean, X-Men 97, if the cartoon does it better, then you are doing something terribly, terribly wrong. And yeah, I mean, man, the villain they even picked. Speaking of villains, I mean, I noticed Alex is saying, what do you guys think of the first villain the X-Men face in the MCU will be Arcade? I love it. There's a great comic I have of the Arcade. He's a great villain, and if they finally make a real life version of him, it's gonna be amazing. But Days of Future Past, when this was announced in terms of that they were doing this movie, and first of all, for First Class, I was coming off of a high. I was like, oh my God, they finally got a great director who really clearly very, very much cares about the X-Men world and knows what they're doing and like all this stuff. And you know what? The first X-Men movie, like I said, I'll give Brian props because no one ever done a comic book movie before. Should you have listened to people who knew comics? Absolutely. But hey, props to you for getting it that far, getting it onto the big screens, making us realize that, hey, we could do comic book films in the modern times and make them fun and all this stuff. Days of Future Past comes out, and then the long story short of it all is that when I heard Bryan Singer was back, I was like, oh no. And then like it just unfolded this whole steamrolling effect of like, oh no, this can't be good. And I don't know how this happened, but like Bryan Singer moved on to Superman, and he's like, yeah, I'm gonna do Superman Returns. I'm gonna have a blast doing it. It did okay. It did all right for Superman's sake. Matthew Vaughn crushes it out of the park. And I don't know how this conversation unfolded. I don't know if Matthew Vaughn wanted to do it or whatever happened, but somewhere in my brain, it's like what happened was X-Men does really well, and then Bryan Singer's like, oh well, clearly I helped build this experience, so I'll come back and show you how it's done to really, I just don't know where this disconnect happened.
I love how he talks like John Wayne in your fantasy. All right, there, son, I'm gonna fix your X-Men again. Here I come.
Here I come to do it. It's like, yeah, I don't know what happened to bring back Singer. I don't know if even Fox was just like, well, Vaughn did great, but he's still pretty greenhorn around these kind of movies. Let's bring back Singer. And I just don't know where the decision was of like, let's swap out Vaughn for Singer again. That's where I'm going with this.
Right. Yeah. So this is going to be an interesting podcast here, buddy, because I agree on one hand where
no, you agree all the hands and all the claws. You agree.
As an adaptation of the Days of Future Past story, no, it falls short completely. As an X-Men movie, I love this film a bunch. I love this movie so much that I don't know how I'll feel by the end of the podcast, but at this moment in time, it is my favorite X-Men movie. It is.
Okay. All right. We're
So
going
that's
there.
those are
Going
the,
there.
the angles that we're coming at this movie from. Now I have the, maybe you can say luxury or maybe you can say misfortune, but whatever one you choose, I have that of having never read the comic and never, just not being in the comic headspace at all, really. I know it's a very Bishop and Kitty Pryde centric story. I thought they did a really good job in the cartoon with that. And this movie, I never sort of looked at it saying like, okay, they better adapt it this way. I just was like, hey, it's a story with the X-Men and time travel and Sentinels. Like, I'm there for it. And right off the bat, they give us not only Sentinels for the first time, for real, giant heads in the Danger Room don't count. But first of all, they're terrifying. But then we also get Blink. We also get Warpath and Colossus and Iceman and Shadowcat. I'm like, oh, come on. Like, this is... And Bishop, of course, even though, yes, he is not the main character, and if they were adapting it properly, he should have been. But getting to see those characters on the big screen for the first time was just a mind treat for me. I was like, oh, look at that. Especially Blink, man. The way Blink used her powers, holy cow. I thought Nightcrawler's teleportation was cool, but this, so much fun.
Yeah, so you're definitely, I can see where your excitement comes from, but yes, yes, did it fail as a Days of Future Past story? 100% it did. I agree with what Alex is saying, which is like this could have been Bishop and Kitty Pryde's time to shine, and it wasn't. It wasn't. To be fair, I mean Kitty Pryde has a more predominant role in this one. How her powers allow people's consciousness to time travel is still a bit beyond me.
Yeah, that's kind of sweaty. I don't. They could have just made up a mutant for that at that point.
Yeah, no. In the comic, there's a really good reason for it, and I can't remember why. But yeah, they were essentially reduced to cameo. Bishop was reduced to a cameo, and he's like a pivotal character. Especially well done in the cartoon for sure. And I also just this is something I hate in certain superhero movies that they do, where they have to over explain something. And I've talked about this many times before. Like the Solo movie is just one big exposition on like a pivotal moment in Solo's life. They literally should have called it Solo the Kessel Run. I've done this joke many times before, but Bishop. My point is with Bishop is his power is that he can absorb energy and then project it back at people, right? That's what he does. But for some reason, he has to have a gun attached to his arm that allows him to absorb it, put it in his gun, and then redistribute it. And I was like, why do you even need the gun? Like, we're in, like, all these characters have, like, crazy powers. What's, like at some point did someone think like, oh, this is gonna be a sci-fi movie? So yeah, it's a sci-fi weapon. Make it look real sci-fi. Like it's just I don't know how these conversations took place. If I could time travel myself and be in the room where these conversations happened, I would have just screamed at these people. Just like, because I don't know how someone thought that was a good idea. Like all you needed was the M scar, and you just you could have him take the energy, and then his veins light up with the energy fiddling through to his arms, and he shoots it back out. Because to be fair, and you're absolutely right, Blink, who is absolutely stunning, by the way, good old Bing Ding Vaughn there. The way they made her powers look was really good, and it still holds up today, in my opinion. It does a really good job. Warpath looked amazing as well, and just kind of, just a fun character to have. They actually really pulled some unique characters. They had Sunspot, for crying out loud. They had Sunspot in this one.
That's who that was. I didn't know who the character was, and he looked different from how Sunspot looks. I was like, why is Human Torch in this movie?
I do also want to say I did love the opening. And first of all, they did Nimrod dirty. I don't like this techno-organic thing. I don't know why Michael Bay and people like Bryan Singer feel like this type of technology needs to look superhuman and really, I don't even know how to describe it, but organic. And it's just like, no, like you could still make them robotic. Very kind of, I would have done like, I would have used kind of a Japanese retro futuristic tone for Nimrod, where it's still blocky, but they move in a very organic way, which would have been really cool to see. But I love the opening scene. I kind of got Terminator 2 vibes in terms of the
Yeah.
futuristic war, but it was nice to see a futuristic kind of. I don't want to say it was nice to see that because, as I say, it just kind of doesn't sound right. But like they kind of did like the mutant Holocaust in the future, right? And
Yeah. Yeah.
that, but it was the environment they designed was really good to convey that kind of experience. And yeah, just seeing that kind of the mutant scratched on their face thing, it was really cool. Like they went the distance for that. But yeah, certain character designs and choices I wasn't 100% on board with, but I do feel like Warpath and Blink really stood out in terms of mutants, and like looking like they did. And then of course Colossus and Iceman, I mean, you get to see them doing their thing in a little more elevated experience.
Mhm.
So that was really cool. Even Sunspot, it was really cool to see Sunspot do his thing as well.
Yeah, this is a really, really great opening. And as much as I love the movie, I agree with you and I agree with Alex that, this should have been Bishop's story. And this was still a point in time where clearly they were terrified of making an X-Men movie that didn't have Wolverine in it, or Xavier or whatever. Like they were just terrified of that concept. And if MCU ever tackles this story, you can bet your ass it's going to be Bishop and Kitty Pryde. And then the whole Nimrod of it all, how they kind of took it and turned it into a different thing where it's not Nimrod anymore. That kind of goes back to that idea of using Logan as a crutch in the movies too much. These new ones, the first class timeline, so to speak, also really tries to make Mystique more important than she needs to be, right? Because now that's why you have these new Sentinels where they're just like, oh, they took Mystique's powers, and they do like it. They were really trying to be like, oh my god, guys, Jennifer Lawrence is so expensive. We need to have a reason to keep her in these movies. The Sentinels are made out of her, right? There's clearly some behind the scenes sweatiness happening to get that done. So I get it. I get that people who wanted to see Nimrod and all his pink glory were disappointed. I get that people who wanted to see Master Mold, like Alex is saying, were disappointed, and that's kind of dumb. Like it could have been so easy to just put Master Mold in there, just like as a big guy, where the Sentinels come out of him. Like when you see the ships come at the end, why was one of them not him? Right? Like there is a lot of ways they could have done Master Mold, and clearly the source material was not at the forefront of a lot of people's minds. So even though the source material is not important to me, I can totally understand how it would hurt this movie for people that it is important to.
You have to look at the formula for Marvel movies now, right? Like where the most successful ones, it's like when we first talked about in the early days of Infinity Rewatch, when the formula is done right, they take the important events of the comics, and they're fairly comic accurate. But the moments leading up to it are slightly different. In this movie, they do have some events, but they're not comic accurate. Like the beats are there, but it's literally just the shell of the moment, and then it's like everything leading up to it and within it are completely different.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, it's not going to be a 1-to-1 scale, and I'm okay with that myself. But again, I totally get it. People love the comics, then they want to see the comics. That's totally understandable. But it is at the end of the day.
I think we hit that note.
Yeah.
Real.
It is at the end of the day a high stakes time travel story, and I love those to pieces. So like, I mean, you've got a movie that is basically X-Men meets Terminator, like you said. So like, there's no way I could not love this. But the whole time travel thing starts to happen, and we get the little explanation of Kitty with her thing, and how Wolverine is the one who can, at least it's a creative way to say this is why it's Wolverine doing it. At least if for no other reason, it is creative of them to be like, yeah, he's the only one who can handle that. Could they have thrown in a time machine instead? Sure, but I love just how tense the movie is throughout because they establish the Sentinels as a threat unlike we've seen before. Like there's no stopping them, essentially. You just run and buy yourself time. And that to me is a terrifying way to present the villains. So that made me happy. That whole idea of like, this is a doomed group of heroes unless this 1 in a million shot with time travel can change things.
Yeah, it's true. I also thought with time travel, like we would get Cable as well. Like there was I had a lot of high hopes for this movie in terms of the playing around with time travel and doing all the cool things they did. But I will say there is some solid adaptation moments. Like there are some solid moments in this movie. And we talked about how Mystique is kind of one of the anchors of the story, because you have essentially good, evil, and then kind of Mystique being the moral center ground and where this could go, right? And like at first, technically, it's the Sentinels that are evil, but Magneto then becomes the ultimate evil above it all else, which in my mind is not the most graceful way to do it. But what I love about and of course the second you know that Wolverine's going back in time, you're kind of just like, okay, here we go. It's a Wolverine movie. Here we go. It was the 6th Wolverine movie. Okay, let's do this. Here we go. You know what I mean? Like it's just kind of like, all right, let's see where this goes. I mean, in the end, it makes sense. You're right. Wolverine was kind of a logical choice. But what I do like is that Wolverine goes back to find like a very destroyed Xavier. And that story to me was awesome. Like this guy who's supposed to be the pinnacle of society, like pinnacle of mutants and like trying to create this like perfect world, literally destroyed by his dreams, which is like, to me, that's like amazing storytelling. Like we talked about it last time with the hero being challenged at like their, by their environment to a point where like, they almost lose, but then they they learn from it and grow and evolve kind of thing. And in this, I just love that he is so defeated. Like I love how defeated he is. And it works so much for this character who is like a internal optimist. Like everything is super positive for him.
Yeah, we get to see Xavier at his lowest point we've ever seen him. And like he has really no X-Men except Beast. Beast is just kind of his live-in butler / paramedic.
Yeah.
And
I don't like what they did to Beast. I love the actor. I think that was a terrible utilization of a great actor, but I'll live with it.
No, as a Beast fan, this Beast is pretty ratchet. Like now he's the Hulk, and when I get excited, it comes. No, thank you. And when he does turn, he still looks like somebody just cosplaying as Beast. Like it doesn't look good at all.
Yeah.
There's a scene where they go to Saigon, and there's the mutants start fighting, and there's a mutant whose power it is to make people vomit. This is the side in the war when they're leaving the war there. And like, who is that guy? Because that is officially the last mutant I would ever want to fight.
I think his name is Plague, if I'm not mistaken. Technically, he's one of the Horsemen for Apocalypse, but usually it's portrayed by a female character, if I'm not mistaken. I'll have to double check as I go through here.
That makes sense. If he's Pestilence, then that's the perfect power for him to have.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Yeah, I would chalk him up to that character, or could be Hazmat, one or the other. But yeah, that kind of character. But yes, that character does exist in the comics. I did like though that they had this kind of, and again, a great storytelling here as well, where they had this kind of secret division in the military that they use mutants.
Mm-hmm.
And then finally, they gave Havoc more comic accurate powers, where the beams actually come from his hands, as opposed to throwing these kind of power discs from his body.
Yeah.
He can project lasers really anywhere out of his body in kind of these circles, but more popular than not is when he does it from his fists, which is really cool.
Right. And Mystique comes to help these guys all out and get them out of Saigon because the war is kind of over, I think. I can't remember what exact year this was supposed to take place. And of course, who's there being mean to mutants, being a big old meanie? But William Stryker, who's not a colonel yet, looking a hell of a lot like Jacob the werewolf from Twilight.
Yeah.
And he's just strikering it up and being a douche. And I forgot he was in this movie, right? I forgot he was in it. And when he showed up, I still didn't realize how much he was in it. This guy was in it a lot.
He's in it quite a bit. I mean, he feels shoehorned in a little bit because obviously it just makes sense for Wolverine's story. And it's kind of like, well, Wolverine's back in the 70s. He's got his bone claws. So clearly we need to explain where Stryker was at this time so that you know that the events in Wolverine Origins all tie together in one neat little package.
Yeah.
So I was surprised that he was in it as well. I do want to comment too, especially with the Xavier side arc. I agree with Alex here as well that the whole cure thing didn't run with me either. That he's had this cure this whole time that he invented, and it's like a drug, and I just didn't appreciate that. You could have just left them without the cure thing, and they're just both in this mansion by themselves, like totally destroyed.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. And Xavier's just like unwilling to use his powers at all. That would have been really cool for sure. But yeah, William Stryker's in it. It was interesting to see. Interesting to see him do his thing there. I like the World War II story. I think they could have gone a little further with that, and maybe told some more cooler stuff.
Well, not World War II. No, Vietnam.
Not World War II. Sorry, Vietnam War. Yeah. But they could have done some more stuff with that, I think, and really opened up some stories there. But it was very short-lived.
Well, speaking of short and more stuff, I should have mentioned this off the top probably, but I watched the extended Rogue cut. Is that the same one that you watched?
No, I watched the one on Disney Plus.
Oh, okay. I don't know which one is on Disney Plus. I don't know if it's the extended version or not, but I have the Rogue cut, which I think is like a substantial bit longer. Like I think like 10, 11 minutes longer, maybe a little bit more. So there's a lot of extra little bits and pieces that kind of just get padded to it. That adds a lot. Like I think the fight scenes with the Sentinels are more violent too. Like when the Sentinels kill some folks. But getting to see Stryker also, that kind of ties into another, arguably our main villain of the movie, our human villain, is Bolivar Trask.
I loved that they put Bolivar Trask in it, and I love even more that they put Peter Dinklage, because he could not be stopped at this time as a force of acting nature. But he was a great Trask. He really fit the bill. He came in, I love in scenes like he couldn't get government. He kept struggling to get government grants and stuff like that until he found like a perfect opportunity to really take advantage of a crisis situation and just be like, look, like mutants got us 10-1. Like, you know what I mean? Like we have mutants that can control metal. This is bad. And like, what defense do we have for this? Nothing. But I have a program that can make this work, and it's the Sentinels. And I remember seeing a promo image of Dinklage as Trask, and I was like, oh yeah, let's go! Like this is gonna be awesome. And yeah, it was a really. I think they really could have pumped up his story a lot. Like it was good, but it could have been way better.
Yeah, I was hoping we'd get to see more of him, and unfortunately, that's not one of the things that I think the extended cut adds. I don't think it gives you more Trask,
No.
as far as I know. But it's a testament to Dinklage because he's not only playing Trask, but he's got scenes where he has to play Mystique pretending to be Trask, and he does that too. And I'm having like a bit of a Mandela effect here, Ryan, because I remember some kind of explanation in this movie of like Trask hates mutants because this is his backstory, and just like a throwaway sentence or something of like, oh man, like his daughter died in a mutant fight, whatever. And that's not in the movie. I don't know where I'm remembering that from. His motivations are not entirely made clear.
There's a scene. With the Mystique scene, there's that big frame where you see Trask with a woman in a wheelchair, and he's giving her a prosthetic appendage.
Right.
But that I don't think they go into explaining what it is.
Okay. That my mind might have turned that into something.
Yeah, your mind could have like totally built a narrative that way.
Yeah, I must have seen that 10 years ago and been like, wow, that means Magneto cut off her leg. I don't know why I talked like an 8-year-old boy 10 years ago, but it is what it is.
So the Sentinel program gets designed, and I will say I will never forget. I will never forget when the official look at Sentinels were revealed, and the amount of Dyson vacuums promos that have followed. Like, I remember people being like, "Oh yeah, Fox announced what the Sentinels look like in Days of Future Past," and they show a picture of like 2 Dyson vacuums as like the legs, and like a massive Dyson vacuum as the body. It was so good. I had to laugh so hard because it was like, I don't know who approved that. Bryan Singer, I guess, but like people were not happy, and especially too, despite your ruling that a giant head of the Sentinel doesn't count in X3, that was the closest we got to what an actual Sentinel looked like.
It is the closest. I'm happy they're purple at least. Like,
yeah, I guess
it was. You know how these movies have gone, Ryan. We watch these together now. It is the odds of those Sentinels ending up purple were slim. There was at least 20 people in the dev department who's like, let's make them black and give them a trench coat. It's true. You're right. The use of like a stark color that's like purple. Yeah, absolutely. That would have been hard to pull off. But what's funny is Dyson vacuums at the time were very purple as well, and they still are. It's just like people were really trolling at that point with that choice in the Sentinel things. But we move on to rescuing Magneto from the Pentagon. Yeah, which means they gotta call his boy.
Yeah, recruiting his son, Quicksilver. And I remember this was the beginning of the Fox Marvel war, of using the two characters that they could quote unquote share because of the rights, which was Quicksilver and Wanda. And that Fox had the rights to only use the word mutant. So in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. or even Age of Ultron, they couldn't use the word mutant. Mm-hmm. And so they go recruit this Quicksilver. But I will say, I think this was a really fun Quicksilver. This was a really well done, very exciting to watch Quicksilver.
10 blows the other Quicksilver out of the water, as far as I'm concerned.
Oh, easily, yeah.
And if my last name was Maximov, I guess I'd become a porn star. Like that's just what a last name. My last name is Fantasia, so I guess who am I to talk here? But getting to meet Quicksilver was pretty cool. We don't meet Wanda. We meet another little girl. We hear that there's a second sister, but we don't see her because Wanda's they're twins, right? So there's no way that could have been Wanda. Yeah. So Quicksilver, this version of Quicksilver is using his powers for lawful evil. He's just stealing Twinkies and doing things a guy his age would do. but he is the perfect person to get them into the Pentagon. And thank God they brought him along, because he pretty much single-handedly pulls their butts out of the fire at the Pentagon. I don't know if you remember how it was in your theater, but that scene of him running through the room and everybody's pretty much frozen. My theater was just, they were rolling in the aisles. They had never seen anything like it. It killed the room. It brought the house down with laughter.
I don't remember laughter. I do remember just like a kind of like a gasp, like or like whoa, like that kind of thing. But like I don't remember a lot of laughter. That's like when you talk about your memory of it, the only thing that comes to mind is kind of like a gasp of moment. But yes, it was quite immaculate to see, or sorry, it was quite the astonishing experience to see Quicksilver do his thing. Like it was really, the effect was really cool.
Mm-hmm. And all those little taps, just a little tap. Would you steal Twinkies if you had super speed?
100%. Or that and Joe Louis, like absolutely. I mean, also you have a super metabolism, right? Like the one thing they talk about a lot with the Flash is that he has an elevated metabolism.
Right.
And he needs to constantly maintain a certain amount of calories, so he has to eat a lot of calories to keep his energy up. So yeah, hell yeah, I would steal Twinkies all the time. But I also steal Joe Louis and then Billy Logs, which I also love. Oh, so good.
What are those ones? I don't know those ones.
I don't know if I'm pronouncing them correctly, but they're these kind of like a strawberry roll. Looks like a Twinkie, but like a pink outside. And then it's sprinkled with like little coconut flakes on top of it.
Oh, that's right.
Really good. It's really good.
Yeah, I remember those. I haven't had one in like 30 years, but I remember them. So they get Magneto out of the Pentagon. So Magneto's back, and now we have this cool little reunion of Magneto and Charles. And again, whenever these two are on screen together, like it's pure X-Men magic. Magneto and Xavier, like you can't
get them wrong. Like
no.
and nor you'd be doing yourself a major disservice if you did. But yeah, they casted the perfect older versions of themselves, and immediately casting the best younger versions of themselves to a point where they almost look like it's one character's life. Like that's how good the casting is.
Yeah, and like when they. Well, I don't want to jump ahead. We won't jump ahead yet, but it is seamless. You're right. It is a seamless move. Then we get to see Cerebro again, but we get to see the 70s version of Cerebro. So now another instance of the meshing between the Matthew Vaughn prequel stuff and the Bryan Singer original stuff. Because we see the classic hallway with big old X door, and there's Cerebro. And Ryan, if this Cerebro scene has taught me anything, if I've learned one thing from seeing the 1970s version of Cerebro, it's that technology in the 1970s just had so much more personality than it does now. Like the little dials and knobs, like everything was so much more tactile with computers back then. We live in such a boring time. Everything just I feel like everybody who designs every piece of technology today is just like, how boring can we make it, guys? Like that's their first design rule. Make it boring.
I think the problem is they mistake it for sleek, right? They want to make it as sleek as possible, but oftentimes when you do that, you compromise on its style. That's why for me, one of my favorite kind of styles in science fiction is cyberpunk, because it's usually a hybrid of flash and substance. So like you said, like, you know, the 70s got all these like really tactile buttons and stuff, but it's kind of a hybrid between the two. And so you really kind of get this like flashy looking device, but it also looks bulky and like very practical.
Yeah. That's one of the many reasons why I'm excited for Alien Romulus, which is coming out this year, because they are sticking to the old look. I believe they call it cassette core. The design of the ship is basically going to look just like the design from Alien.
Absolutely, yeah. Sign me. I mean, For me, what I look forward to is just more Space Marines. Just give me Space Marines. Like they're just James Cameron's Aliens, man. Those were the kind of Space Marines I could watch all day. Like those guys are the best. But yeah, bringing it back to X-Men, yes, Magneto and Xavier, man. It's just fun to watch, and they nailed the relationship. I love their debate on the plane of like why one failed the other, and they both come at each other with the same intensity about why each one failed the other, and it's beautiful. It's such a beautiful relationship. I love it so much. It's so I just think like that's how you need to write villainy, and like I actually was watching one of my favorite X-Men episodes today, which is Asteroid M, is like one of my favorites. A lot of Magneto stories are like my favorite through the X-Men cartoon. Asteroid M, and then also the one Out of the Past where they bring in, where they show what happens if Xavier died early,
right?
And what the world is like, and how Magneto is like that. I love those stories. But what I loved was how Xavier said in the cartoon, but the message of their conversation on the plane was like, I abhorred his method, but I respected his ideology. And it's like, so good.
And I mean that, like, I can't believe we haven't talked about this yet tonight, but did you see X-Men 97 today?
Oh, I mentioned it earlier. Yeah, X-Men 97, man.
Like today's episode, you saw it, right? Okay.
I literally physically cannot start my day until I watch it. Like, I get up early enough so I could work out. And then while I work out, I watch it, and it's awesome. It's so good.
Now, I mean, we got a lot of stuff happening in there, and like the Magneto is right thing was just, I mean, that goes into what you're saying. Like, the methods may be brutal, but his ideology is sound. And then to top it all off, I can't believe we didn't geek out about this the minute we turned on our cameras, but Spider-Man!
Dude, freaking even the last episode they brought in Captain America, I was like, oh, I'm like, they did it. They honestly, they could run from this point. They could just do an entire series based on the X-Men, but have like every character, and just do. You can do Civil War now. You can just easily do Civil War.
Bring back the Marvel animated universe, and just do stuff. Oh my God. We saw Spider-Man again today. That particular Spider-Man, we saw him. I have no words for that. I have no words. And we also saw a cameo from Doom.
Yep.
And a cameo from Zemo. And a cameo from a lady whose face was in the shadows, and I don't know who she was, and maybe you do. Who was she?
I think it was Madam Viper.
Ooh. Okay. All right. And there's a rumor that Diamondback is in Brave New World. So if they're really pushing for the Serpent Society ladies, then they're on the right track here.
Dude, okay. They had General Ross. They had freaking Captain America.
I know.
And broke through his shield. It was the best 30 seconds of my life.
Oh man.
It was so good. I mean, we literally have to stop talking about Days of Future Past just to appreciate what we just saw. But yeah, I can't believe, honestly, at this point, I think you're right. They could easily do Spider-Man 97. They could just do Marvel 97 and just do an entire run using that animation and just include everybody. I would say at that point, I don't even care what happens in the movies. Because the cartoons, they found the world and they have the best writing, and just continue with that.
Exactly. That would be my dream come true if they bring back those cartoons.
Just Marvel 97. Just call it that and just run with it.
Spider-Man needs to find Mary Jane, damn it. She's out there somewhere.
Yeah.
Okay.
Marvel 97. Kevin Feige, make it happen. I know you're watching this. Just keep it going. Just keep it rolling. Anyways,
Please.
so yes, the relationship between Xavier and Magneto is so much fun, but like they actually do a good job of steering Magneto. Like he clearly sees that this isn't going to work, right? Xavier's not the way to go. He's going to try to convince Mystique not to do it, but I think he even mentions it. You can't stop time from moving forward.
Right.
And that was his argument. You cannot stop. Like, what's to stop her doing it again and doing it again? And that's why he tries to kill her, which is awesome. Like, it's such a beautiful take on why Magneto would believe it that way. And then what I love is like, well, if I can't stop her, then I'm just going to do what the natural right thing to do is, and essentially accelerate the mutant agenda, which is corrupt the Sentinels, which I don't know how his magnetism powers can really affect computers on a programming level, but I'll let it slide. It's fine. No, I'll buy it. But yeah, he like infects he infects the Sentinels, and then it turns them all on humans, which is great. But I love it. I loved it so much. Oh my god, it was so good.
That whole scene in the boardroom was like just rife with tension. Because Mystique is in there, she's in disguise, and then the heroes roll up, and then Logan's all messed up because Stryker's there, and seeing him gives him just like some flashbacks that he doesn't want to be having, and Trask gets away. Like there's so much happening there, and that is a big turning point in the movie because it brings the heroes to another low point. And because of that low point, we get what I will say is another cinematic, iconic Marvel moment, which is young Xavier getting to talk to old Xavier.
Oh, that was so beautiful. So beautiful. Oh my god, I love that too. That was so nice.
Right? And it's exactly like you said at the top, like the optimistic Xavier who has seen the good that he can do needs to reach back and talk to his younger self and say, like, keep going. You're going to get there. Like, wouldn't we all love that opportunity to talk to our younger self?
Honestly, get out of my head, man, because I was about to say the same thing. I mean, in all of our own struggles, we always wish that our future version of ourselves would find a way to reach out to us and just let us know to stay the course, and you'll get through it, like kind of thing. It's a moment in the classic hero's journey that like you always kind of wait for. And it's just so poetic and beautiful. And of course it's Patrick Stewart. It's Sir Patrick Stewart, of course, doing it.
Right.
It's so good.
I mean, when you get Patrick Stewart and James McAvoy on screen together, like you can't ask for better than that.
But that was the way to go. These are the moments I'm talking about where it's like someone was obviously steering the ship in the right way. Someone knew that like there's some solid moments you really need to deliver if you're going to really tell the story, and they found those moments and put it in the movie because that is a beautiful moment.
And I think that leads us into the big climax, doesn't it? The unveiling of the Sentinels, the big
yes,
party.
The rally.
Yeah. This is one of the scenes that I know was extended. When they get to this rally, Xavier is sitting next to a war vet who's also in a wheelchair, and I think his leg is blown off or something. And they have a little discussion where the vet says like, oh, I was, I caught a grenade or whatever. Like, what happened to you? Why are you in the chair? And Xavier just kind of smiles at him and he says, "Friendly fire." And it was just a really, really cool moment. It was one of my favorite lines, and it turns out that was from the extended cut, which also involves Rogue, who I think we kind of skimmed over. But yeah, she doesn't have much to do in the movie still, but the extended cut gets her in on things, which was nice. It was nice to see Rogue again. She's my second favorite X-Man, so I'll take all the Rogue I can get.
No, in the original cut, she only has like one scene. It's like a cameo scene at the end.
Yeah.
So or even in the beginning too. Like in the beginning, she has two scenes in the movie, and that's it. Like it's really small. Yeah. So I first of all, I love new Magneto outfit. The helmet could have still maintained its integrity from the last one because it looked better. I don't know why I went for a rustic look. I just don't get it personally.
We'll get the purple and red. We're getting yellow and blue Wolverine. We'll get the purple and red Magneto one day.
Yeah, one day for sure. So and the baseball stadium lifting in the air thing, that was cool. They nailed like the way Magneto does his stuff in this really well. It's really fun to watch personally. And then I love how they nailed the Reagan lookalike. I don't know who they casted for that, but they did a good job of bringing back Reagan. It's just like
Nixon.
Sorry.
Yeah, that Nixon
was Mark Camacho played President Nixon, but he nailed it, man. I even heard him being like, "What's going on here?" It's just like so accurate.
And they nailed the character too. Yeah, he's just with his dogs. Just everything's happening. He's just like, checkers, come here. Oh, no, for you.
But yeah, and I love the Sentinels being a little more aggressive. It was fun to watch. I mean, I missed the laser beams. I would have preferred some laser beams as opposed to a Gatling gun strapped to their arm. Overall, the climactic battle was fun, but it's pretty stale overall. Like, it wasn't like super crazy.
Yeah, it was an emotional battle more than a physical one because the movie does. I mean, the movie's main villain is Trask, just in a very roundabout way. I guess the same way that Civil War's villain is Zemo, but it's not about how much screen time he has. It's about what he does and what impact it has. And like, you could also look at the movie and argue Mystique and Magneto are the villains too. And then of course there's the Sentinels on top of that, but the Sentinels kind of go hand in hand with Trask. I was having a hard time thinking like, okay, who is the villain of this movie? But I think that the way it wraps up with this battle, it does a good job emotionally of getting the characters in the right spot and everybody reacts the right way. Magneto, like, pretty much almost killing Logan makes sense because he doesn't know who this guy is. He doesn't care. He's just going to brush him aside. By the way, can Logan drown?
I knew you were going to ask me this. When I saw it happening, I'm like, oh man, I bet he's going to ask me if Wolverine can survive this. I'm going to say he could survive it. In a way, he survives it. Let's put it that way. Because like, what happens is your body, your lungs fill up with water, right? Mm-hmm. That's what's happening to you. But essentially, my guess is from a comic book standpoint is that his body just gets suspended. You know what I mean? Like, his body just shuts down to a point. His body shuts down to a point where it's like, it's not, is like all that's functioning is brain functioning. So it's kind of like a coma. And then when you bring him out and you get the water out of his lungs, it kind of kickstarts his body back and then he heals from it. That's my guess.
See, I don't know, because if your lungs are filled and you can't breathe, oxygen is not getting to your brain.
Right.
So I don't think the brain would function. I think maybe his heart would stop. I think maybe I think he might die. I don't think, because there's no healing that can be done.
But he was down under for a while, so I don't know.
Yeah.
I do think there's some anomaly way of getting him out of it, but it's like, my understanding is like, I thought decapitation would stop him personally. But I've seen like Deadpool essentially regrow in the comics from like the head down, right? So
yeah, Deadpool's weird. He does his own thing.
Yeah, Deadpool is kind of a not a good measure. But I've also seen like Wolverine get disintegrated down to like his bones and still heal from that. So there's just some magical comic book way, my friend, for him to survive.
Okay. I'm going to call up whoever invented Wolverine. Who is that? Claremont? Who invented
Yeah.
him?
Actually, fun fact: I thought the guy who played the Wolverine voice died, but it's not. The guy who played Wolverine's voice is still alive, and he is in the X-Men cartoon today.
Yeah, he's still kicking.
I think his name's Carl Dodd or something like that. But yeah, fun fact.
I'm pretty sure once you play Wolverine, you become immortal like him.
Yeah,
that's what I've heard. Anyway.
Well, the Gambit, Rogue, Beast, they're all still there. Cyclops and Jean, on the other hand, they're not the original actors.
That's right. Yeah. Though I think the original Cyclops might be dead, but the original Jean is now, she's the blonde lady who said Magneto was right. That's the original Jean.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Yeah, her name's Catherine Disher. She's on a show that my mom loves to watch called The Good Witch. And she's so like flamboyant and over the top in that show. And I'd never realized until like last month that she was the voice of Jean Grey back in the day. So now I'm like, oh my God, this lady is my hero. So the end of this movie, like, again, I love time travel stuff. I love how Mystique puts that gun down and it's like, it's so close to pulling the trigger, and she puts it down. And as soon as she puts it down, the Sentinels break in and then everything fades away. And it's just like,
yeah.
Oh God, I love that so much. I'm already like trying to plan a Marvel United game where I play two simultaneous games at once, where one is in the future and one's in the past, and because it can be done. I have the tools in the game to do that.
That's so cool.
And then the movie ends in a really interesting way because it feels like it sets up more films that we never really got to see.
Well, they do the beautiful thing where Wolverine wakes up and it's like the Disneyland of the X-Men mansion. Everyone's back, like, hey, oh my God, it's Wolverine. And got even Kelsey Grammer's Beast being like, hey, well, broke up on the wrong side of the bed.
Yeah, that got a big laugh in my theater too. I still remember that. We were like, oh my God, it's Beast. But yeah, it sets up this world where it's the classic X-Men team back together, and nobody would blame you for thinking like, oh, they're setting up a new timeline, so we don't have to worry about X-Men 3. Like, Jean is fine, Cyclops is fine, right? It's all there. And no one would be blamed for thinking we're getting more movies in that timeline now as well. And we never did. It just kind of, I guess it just gives them a happy ending and just leaves it there, which is cool. In a way, you could argue that it sets up the world of the animated series, because I'm pretty sure it's the same roster minus Gambit that we end up getting when Jubilee meets them. But yeah, I like that ending. What do you think of that ending about stopping the Sentinels and all that? The whole climax in general. How did it hit you?
It's a very kind of like, it's like everything's wrapped up in a neat little package almost too well. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like, it's just like, oh, I guess that's it. But like the other thing is that, especially if you watch Avengers Endgame now, time doesn't work that way, right? Unless because like the whole premise was that they send Wolverine's conscious, but his body, his consciousness goes back, but his body will alter to wherever he is. I don't know. It was really confusing. So in the end, I'm like, okay. It kind of felt like everything was like wrapped up in a neat little package too much. But what I thought was weird too was certain characters' changes. So Jean's back, which was interesting, and that's kind of like this like gasp moment. But Cyclops, what did they do to his glasses?
Lens Crafters was having a sale.
I don't know, man. Lens Crafters or Akeem Optical is something, man. I don't know where they got those from, but man, does it look weird. and then the awkward handoff, literally, where he's like ready to touch her face, and it's like, whoa, hey.
That was great. I love that moment.
Oh my God. And then so it kind of lingers on the question of like, hey, like, I teach history, but I don't know what is history anymore. And Xavier's like, well, I'm happy to tell you. And it's, I don't know. It's to me, the ending is, it's like it's acceptable, but that's it. It's so superficial. That's all I can say. It's a superficial ending. It's like, hey, like, because like, what did change? That's what I want to know, and I never will know. I never will know what changed.
I mean, I guess if we look at it strictly as, like, if we just look at it from the point of view of the original trilogy, if saving Trask means, publicly saving Trask means there's less racism against mutants, let's say that's what changed. They saved Trask, so now mutants are more respected in the 70s, okay? And that carries through into 80s and 90s and 2000s. So Senator Kelly in this world never goes on his rampage because people like mutants in this world. And therefore, the bad stuff that happened in X-Men 1 never took place, and that chain of events.
But you see what I mean? They hit the reset button, and then you're kind of just left being like, okay, so what happened? Or what is now?
Yeah.
Right? Because like you built this rocky trilogy to begin with, and then you do First Class, and then so you kind of do a prequel soft reset that still plays within the world, the universe, and then you end with a massive reset, right? But at least Endgame was clever enough to not completely rewrite the universe.
Yeah.
The universe is still, all the events still transpired the way they did, but they left with a different conclusion.
Yeah, because Endgame was smart enough to know that people have invested in this story, and to just, pardon the pun, but snap it away does a disservice, and it's cheap. It's cheap storytelling. X-Men didn't care about continuity. The franchise never really did. The movie franchise, they really never cared about continuity. Nobody in X-Men 3 ever even talks about Nightcrawler. Like, nobody gives a crap about continuity in the writers' room.
Yeah.
So at least I agree. I prefer Endgame. I prefer how Endgame handled time travel, but at least it's consistent within the way it's been behaving, if that makes any sense.
No, for sure. And then you get this weird end credit sequence of Apocalypse.
Yeah, he's an Apocalypse.
They just kind of slap you in the face. Like that is a movie adaptation of slapping you in the face of just like, here's Apocalypse.
Here's a guy you've never heard of if you're at the back of the theater in another country that had nothing to do with this story. And also that Trask scene was so weird. It's just like, Trask is in jail now. And what a weird mid-credit scene. That never led to anything. Trask is in jail. Okay. I don't even know the specifics of how he could have gotten arrested. Like, okay, he made the robots and obviously they went crazy, but I don't think he's a rich white guy in 1970s America who works for the government. I don't see him going to jail for making robots that didn't work. Okay. Like that something else it feels like we missed a beat there.
Yeah.
Setting up Apocalypse, I guess, is fun. I know a lot of people like Apocalypse. He's not my favorite X-Men villain, but cool.
The only issue I have with Apocalypse is he's too invincible. Like,
yes,
he's there. Exactly. I don't know what you can do with that in terms of a writing standpoint. I can't even imagine the nightmare. Like at first, I felt that way with Superman, but then I learned that, like, of course, kryptonite. And then I got annoyed with the fact that like pretty much anyone could get their hands on kryptonite if they look hard enough for it. But then I learned that magic hurts Superman. You know what I mean? Then I learned that other aliens can hurt Superman, and depending on the aliens, right? So at least that kind of that makes the character a bit more vulnerable. But like Apocalypse is just, I don't know how you deal with that guy. Like
you know who Apocalypse is? Apocalypse is the Marvel Comics equivalent of Starkiller. You know my feeling on the Star Killer, where it's like somebody there who's creating was like, oh, and he can get really big, and also if you shoot him, he turns the shoot around on you and he explodes you, and he's fine. And also he has 1 million powers, and he can fly. And if you throw him in a black hole, the black hole explodes and he comes back out. It's like, okay.
Like, it's just fandom writing is what it is.
Exactly. Yeah, I am not a fan of Apocalypse at all. And he's boring. He's just one of those boring villains who's like, I am evil. I will talk like this now. Bow before me. But I guess we'll get to him when we get to him. But that was Days of Future Past.
Yeah.
Do you hate this movie more now that you've talked about it?
Yes. Well, I wouldn't say I hate it more. I hate it just the same.
Just
honestly.
the same amount. Okay.
It's just it harkens back to the beginning of this podcast, which is just like, why did they turn away from Matthew Vaughn? Like was this Matthew Vaughn's movie? And they're like, oh man, I don't know if this is gonna pan out, so we should put Bryan Singer back in. Like,
I don't know. He worked on the story. He has a story credit.
Which blows my mind. Like, what happened in the back room? Like, I'm actually really curious.
Yeah, I would love to know what went on there. I guess they wanted Singer back to really give you that feeling of like we're going back to the past thematically, in which case, cool. But that's Matthew Vaughn's a competent director, and we all know how Bryan Singer turned out.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm trying to search it. Speaking with Coming Soon, Vaughn specifically cites Fox's decision to make Days of Future Past direct sequel to First Class, and one of the reasons he left was that. 1 second. Vaughn previously revealed that he intended to make a different X-Men movie in between First Class and Days of Future Past that would introduce a new, younger Wolverine, offering more details to the X-Men trilogy you never saw. One of the reasons he left the franchise, one of the reasons I didn't continue, because they didn't listen to me. I don't even need the rest of I don't even need to read the rest of the quote. If that's the quote right there, I would gladly don't even need to describe anything else. He said, my plan was First Class. My second film was a new young Wolverine in the 70s to continue those characters, my version of the X-Men. So you really get to know all of them. My finale was going to be Days of Future Past. That was going to be my number 3, where you bring them all, because that's the bigger, that's what's bigger than bringing in McKellen and Michael and Stewart and James, bringing them all together.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I remember thinking that too when this came out. It's like you started a new series with First Class, and then right away you're tying it to you're doing your Avengers movie. It's a little quick. There should have been another one in there. See, Matthew Vaughn knows what he's doing. Listen to him. Except for
hold
Argyle.
on, there's
Argyle
more. There's more. There's more.
Okay,
When I quote, when I finished Days of Future Past script with it ready to go, I looked at it and said, I really think it would be fun to cast Tom Hardy or someone as the young Wolverine and then bring it all together at the end. Fox read Days of Future Past and went, oh, this is too good. We're doing it now. And I said, well, what do you think? What do you do next? Trust me, you've got nowhere to go. And then they did Apocalypse, and it's like you flip that round even when it would have been better. Hollywood doesn't understand pacing. There's executives that are driving 100 miles per hour, looking in the rearview mirror, not understanding why they crash.
That is a brilliant quote. Wow. He's right, though. He's right. I
can't believe I did not look this up sooner, but that is a brilliant, his opening reason is like, they didn't listen to me. And it's like, yep, well, that explains.
Yeah. Well, I have a claw rating for this movie.
I do too.
as much as I can accept all of the movie's flaws, and as much as I agree with that Matthew Vaughn quote, which is 100%. What he had in mind would have definitely been better than what we got.
Yeah.
Having said that, I still have so much fun with this movie. It's an X-Men movie through and through. It's a great time travel movie. It's comic booky. It's fun. It's just all the stuff I would want to see out of a time travel X-Men movie with Sentinels. Like, it's all there for me. I'm giving it an X. I love it. X-Claws! You're welcome, Ryan.
Oh my God.
I'm really curious to see how much you give it.
Sometimes I question our friendship. Just kidding. I never do that. I will be a bit more generous on this one, only because there are some really solid moments. I will give it 4 claws.
4 claws. That's a good amount.
I think it's healthy because yes, there are some of the costumes are really good, by the way. And the story is really fun from time to time. But it really loses some claws. It loses the X and 2 claws because of the lack of comic book source material that was followed in this, and the some of the things they expect you to just agree with, and they keep running with. But for me, I love the Magneto Xavier battle continued, if you will, in this one. And I love Xavier defeated story arc. Really earns a lot of merit because they really made him like, yeah, they really put him in his place.
Yeah, and they needed to. This is our 5th rodeo with Charles, so we need to kind of see him at a different spot. It was nice to see him use the word groovy a lot in the first class, but now we want to kind of get him to the emo point in his life before he cuts his hair off, because everybody knows he can't be emo and bald. It doesn't happen.
No, can't do that.
But 4 claws is a good place to put it. According to that, you like it better than The Last Stand, X-Men Origins, and The Wolverine.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Yeah, that tracks. That tracks.
that tracks. Yeah.
All right. So next time on Infinity Rewatch X, we have reached. Sound the Canadian alarm, Ryan, and grab a Timbit because we have reached Deadpool. It's Deadpool time.
No way! Is it Deadpool time?
It's Deadpool time.
Holy crap!
I'm excited
already.
I have not gone back to the Deadpools since I saw part 2 in the theaters. It's been a long time. I'm really excited.
I am super excited as well. I thought it was going to be Age of Apocalypse next, which I'm not excited for at all. Oh
no,
my God.
We still got some. Let me double check because I'm pretty sure we still got some time before Apocalypse shows up. Yeah, Deadpool first, and then Apocalypse, and then Logan, and then Deadpool 2, and then Dark Phoenix, and then the New Mutants.
Oh yeah, they do Dark Phoenix, and I have never seen it, and I still haven't seen it to this day. Oh God, I'm not looking forward to that. Oh God. Okay, well, interesting. So we're kind of in some ups and downs here. We got Deadpool next, which is a huge up, which is like
big up
through the roof. And then we have Age of Apocalypse, which is a big down.
Which is, well, I don't know, this is just me, but I liked Apocalypse more than Dark Phoenix. I do think Apocalypse is a step down, but it's not as big a step down as Phoenix will be.
Yeah.
So,
well, I don't know. I just remember what Chris Claremont said about Dark Phoenix. He had nothing pretty to say about it. So.
Oh, I can only imagine. I'm looking forward to having you experience that for the first time. And New Mutants, because I still haven't seen New Mutants, so I'm looking forward to that rodeo too.
I haven't seen New Mutants either, but I've seen some scenes from it, and it has one of my favorite actors of all time because she's awesome, and she's also just extremely beautiful, which is Anya Taylor-Joy.
Oh, which character does she play?
She plays Magic.
Is she Russian in it? Does she walk around like Hilda will Oh, that's cool. Yeah, Anya Taylor-Joy's really pretty. What would you say to her if you got to meet her for like 5 minutes?
See, this is where your wit comes into play, and you'd have something really clever like right out of the gate. Whereas me, I'm like, you're slow, Letty.
My powers don't work when I'm talking to pretty girls. It's
true.
It takes a nosedive. I'd be like, you are a movie person.
It's funny because I've seen it in real life. Oh my god. I've seen it happen. Literally, I've watched you tumble and fall all.
You've seen it in real time, unfolding before your eyes.
Oh man. Yeah. Okay. I don't know what I honestly don't know what I'd tell her. I think I would say something along the lines of like, I worship you. Just
with like prolonged eye contact. I worship you.
But she is obviously, way too young for me, and I'm a happily married man now. So it's I worship you and leave it at that awkwardness at this point. Yeah, good times. But yeah, she's in New Mutants, and I'm looking forward to watching it.
Cool. Yeah, I did not know Magic was in it. I did not know Anya Taylor-Joy was in it. So that's another 2 check marks to add to why I'm excited. Where can people find you, Ryan, when you are not worshiping Miss Joy?
I'm sorry. All right. You can find me over at Expert Zone, which is on YouTube. So youtube.com/Expert Zone. That's where you find my team and I's material. I've not recorded anything of late, but my team is still producing a lot of content on my behalf. So make sure you just tune in, subscribe, and follow there. And I don't know. Maybe soon I'll start some YouTube stuff of my own. We'll see. We'll see how things play out.
Yeah, you need a YouTube channel. You're just like, what's up, guys? It's your boy Ryan. Today we're gonna talk about the Dyson vacuum cleaner.
We're gonna talk about how the Dyson was the inspiration for Sentinels. Yeah, we'll see. I have the foundation made. I just haven't gone for it yet. It takes a lot. Man. The work you do is really underrated, man, because it's you do some pretty amazing things, and with the time you have.
Oh, thank you. And it's become less and less less and less easy to do as I've focused on other things and work and stuff. But I do try to at least get my quarterly review marathons, because those are my favorite things to do on my channel. I've fallen in love with doing that. But that's one of the places you can find me. You can also find me on Instagram at Andrew Fantasia, and you can find me in the future running from Sentinels until Kitty Pryde, or hopefully Rogue, comes over and it's like, sit still, sugar. I'm gonna put your mind in the past. And I'll be like, you can put my mind anywhere you want, Rogue. I worship you the way Ryan worships Anya Taylor-Joy. And she'll be like, I read about that in the Mississippi Tribune, because she reads a lot of papers about you and Anya. Anyway, that has been Infinity Rewatch X. We'll see you next time for Deadpool, where we'll be so meta, we will basically just be talking about ourselves the whole time. Just to go full Deadpool on it all.
Yeah.
Until then, everybody, please have a marvelous day.